What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today I got for you a video on everything you need to know about getting from level 60 to getting ready and getting into a Molten Core Heat 3. Now we're going to go through this in 5 different parts. We're going to go over your generic gear, your reputations, your attunements, your best in slot gear, and then your Molten Core Heat 3 best in slot gear and your pre-biz for that. Now without further ado, let's get straight into it here. Now for your gear, you're going to want to get as much 0.5 tier as possible to start this out with. Now, I wouldn't spend all of your time grinding this out. However, you do need some good gear to be able to get through dungeons pretty efficiently. So to start out here, you're going to go to Wowhead. You're going to go to your 0.5 gear, and you are going to find out where all of your different pieces drop from. Now, this is going to be your best way along with farming reels in order to do that. Now, the reason that we're going to do this is because we're going to do everything twofold. One, you're going to see where everything drops from, so you can make sure that you get specific bosses, and you can make sure that you don't have anyone contesting your same loot. And the second one is that you're going to do as many different dungeons as possible every day to get your maximum number of reels. Now, obviously, the reels you're going to want to keep to get some fiery cores as well as lava cores to get your actual BiS or Molten Core. However, in order to actually do the later steps here, you are going to need some decent gear. Now, I would say the minimum gear before moving on here is really going to be about 700 to 750 item level. If that doesn't mean anything to you, go to CurseForge and download eye level. Just any one of them works, just as long as it tells you more or less what the item level is, and that should get you through pretty easily. Now moving on to reputations. So the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the Argent Dawn. Now Argent Dawn is really easy to get to honored with. It is a little bit more difficult to get revered and very much so to get exalted. Now pretty much any undead mob in the eastern and western Plaguelands, including in dungeons, is going to give you reputation for killing them, and that'll be the case until you get to honored. Now when you get to honored, now normal mobs in the eastern and western Plaguelands are going to stop giving you reputation when you are friendly, and the elites will stop giving you reputation when they are honored, and bosses in Scholomance are going to give you reputation all the way until exalted. So you can pretty easily just run Scholomance and strat undead and live to get whatever your tier 0.5 pieces are that you are missing to do that, as well as just killing as many things as possible to get as much reputation as you can. Now, when you do get to halfway through honored, the only ways of getting reputation are going to be completing different quests in the eastern and western Plaguelands, so you should keep all of them separately, using your Scourge Stones for the turn-ins in the eastern and western Plaguelands vendors, Argent Dawn vendors, and they are going to be right next to the flight paths. So it is recommended that you do not use any of your Scourge Stone turn-ins until you are done with honored. And the best way to get from revered to exalted is going to be to finish up all of the quests in eastern and western Plaguelands. You're going to get a few thousand from that, then going ahead and doing the Scourge Stone Cauldrons as part of a quest chain, and then basically spamming Scholomance. Now the reason that you want to do Scholomance instead of Strat Undead or Strat Live is because you have more bosses in Skolo, and it also takes less time, and there's less mobs and trash to clear. Now another benefit of doing Skolo over and over is you are going to get more Scourge Stones. So Scourge Stones drop from most of the bosses in Scholomance as well as in Strat Undead, and some in Strat Live. The humanoids do not drop them, so you only have like 3 in live, so don't do that. And turning one in gives you 25 rep, and then using it again is another 25 rep. Now the reason that I like to go for Skolo instead of Strat is because there's 8 bosses that are pretty easily accessible. The 9th one you're pretty much gonna always want to skip because it takes way too long to get in and out of there, and a lot of groups fail that. As well as if you do progress through the quest line long enough, you can actually get the drop for the blood, meaning there's another chance to drop a Scourge Stone from the optional 9th boss. Additionally, when you're in the Whelp room, as long as you have done the quest there, you can actually get the Healthy Dragon Scale, and those give you 50 rep. When you are running through Skolo, you are going to make sure that you have your Argent Dawn commission on, or if you have done the quest where the other one, which essentially acts as it, however, it does either give you attack power or it does give you spell power, depending on which one you choose. you get it from Strat Undead, and you're going to get Minion Scourge Stones, Invader Scourge Stones, and Corruptor Scourge Stones from the bosses. Now, Minion Scourge Stones, you need 20 of them for 1 turn-in, Invader Scourge Stones, you need 10 for 1 turn-in, and Corruptor Scourge Stones, you need 1 for 1 turn-in. Every single turn-in of those is going to give you 25 rep, and then you are going to get an Argent Dawn Valor token from it, and if you use that, and you're going to get another 25 reputation for using it. So that being said, doing this entire thing is going to take you probably about 20 hours to do. It is not very time efficient, and it might even take you longer depending on forming groups and whatever. If you can get into a good solid group, or if you have your tank friend and you're a healer, or vice versa, you can pretty much spam these out 25 minutes a time, and you get about 250 reputation per run. If you're not a human, you get a little bit more if you are, as well as you'll probably get about 4 Corruptor Scourge Stones if you are, hard reserving them, and your friend will also get another 4 as well, and you'll get an average of 1 to 2 scale drops. So if you add that all together here, that is 250 for the run, that is, let's say, 50 for the dragon scale turn-in, that is 100 just for the turn-in on the Scourge Stones, and that is another 100 for using them. So that's about 500 a run, so that's 500 every 25 minutes, which is about 1,000 an hour. Now, obviously, yes, it is very, very slow. So as I said before, just this part alone from Revered to Exalted is going to take you about 20 hours to do so. Now, obviously, that's not even including your Invader Scourge Stones as well as your Minion Scourge Stones turn-in, so it does turn out to be a little bit less than that. However, you do have to take into account the grouping. Now, we're going to move on here to the Hydraxian Waterlord reputation. Now, you want to get at least 2 honored as fast as possible. That is because you get one of your best in slot Heat 3 rings from this. Now, there used to be a good way of farming this outside of the Blackrock Mountain during the Blackrock Eruption event. All the elementals right outside there used to give like 10 to 15 reputation, and you could do it in a raid group. However, Blizzard actually turned off reputation gains. Now, that being said, doing your daily Blackrock Eruption event will get you about 1,600 reputation with the Thorium Brotherhood as well as the Hydraxian Waterlord daily, so you can get to honored in pretty much a week of doing that. Next thing, if you can get into a Molten Core trash farming group, each of the mobs will give you 20 reputation as well, and it'll give you a chance to get a fiery or lava core for your crafted gear for Heat 3, so that is pretty useful, and you'll get through there faster. Now, if you are any of the armor crafters, such as tailoring, leatherworking, or blacksmithing, you actually get different patterns to create fire-resistant gear, such as flare core, flame core, etc. Now, you can buy these off the auction house, no problem at all. However, you can actually turn them in to get upgraded gear. Now, some of this upgraded gear is much better than the other ones. Some of them is not so good. If you look here, for example, we have the Core Hound Belt, and then you have the Thick Core Hound Belt. There is a pretty much minimal difference between them, but if you look at the Flare Core shoulders here, there's a very big difference on the upgraded one. And now, to upgrade them, you need certain reputations. So, for example, if I want to upgrade my Flare Core leggings, I need to have Revered with the Thorium Brotherhood. Now, once you do get to, now moving on to the Thorium Brotherhood, now there are 3 options for the turn-ins to get from neutral to friendly. Just kind of peruse the auction house and see what it is. Now, you're always going to need 240 Incendisaur scales, 120 coal, and then you're either going to need 480 King's Blood, 480 iron bars, or 1,200 heavy leathers. Now, when you do finish all these turn-ins here, you are going to get to friendly. Now, the fastest and the cheapest way from friendly to honored with the Thorium Brotherhood is going to be the Dark Iron Residue. You can pick those up for a few copper on the auction house, and you need about 1,000 of them for the turn-ins to get from friendly to honored. And when you are honored, the fastest way to get to revered is to do the Dark Iron turn-ins, or the Fiery Core, Lava Core, Core Leather, or the Blood of the Mountain turn-ins. Now, those are really, really expensive, so I don't really recommend doing that. I recommend just kind of piggybacking on the Hydraxian Waterlords reputation farm and just kind of getting as close to that as possible. Now, if you don't need revered for the crafted gear, then you can obviously go ahead and not do this at all. However, this is going to give you some pretty good gear to use later on. And that's pretty much all the reputations. Now, getting into the attunements, there are 2 attunements that you need to do: the Onyxia attunement and the Molten Core attunement. Now, the Molten Core attunement is really, really simple. You're going to talk to the elf that is right outside BRD, and you're going to do a lava jump skip all the way to the entrance. You are going to need a few people for this, as there are some elementals there, and you're going to get whacked sacked if you do not have a good tank or a healer. You can 3-man it, however, you do need a tank and a healer for this. And you're going to click on the thing, go talk to the guy again, and you can turn in the quest. Now, if the quest giver is being camped by either faction, you can turn it in while you are a spirit, so keep that in mind. Now, for the Onyxia attunement, it is going to start out in the Dragonkin Menace for the Alliance, and that's going to start from the Burning Steps, and it's going to give you a whole 5 to 10 hour long quest line. You can go and do that. And for the Horde, it's going to start out in Kargith in the Badlands. Now, for Alliance, for the last part of it, the Grand Masquerade, you can do it in a raid group, and you have to have somebody who is in the keep, in the Stormwind Keep, where you're going to have the Queen as well as the kid there to make sure that Bolvar has spawned there. Now, the reason you want to do this is because the quest giver, Reginald Windsor, actually spawns before Bolvar does. So if you do click on and, you know, start the Grand Masquerade, you are actually not going to be able to complete it, and it's going to say failed. So don't do that. And that's all you need to know about your attunements. Next, we're going to get here into your BiS list. Now, there's going to be two very different BiS lists, okay? You're going to have your BiS list, and then you're going to have your Heat 3 BiS list. Now, for your Pre-BiS list, you are going to have a grid. A lot of the websites right now, like Wowhead and Zakify, are not correct. Hopefully, they get them correct in the future. Now, obviously, I have one for being a Resto Druid. However, the generic and the general way of doing this is by getting your crafted gear. Now, Blizzard did intend for you to run like Heat 1 once, just to get a few things, then to getting into Heat 2, and then doing Heat 2 for like 3-4 weeks until you get to 226 fire resistance, and then you can clear Heat 3 at that point. Now, your BiS list is going to be pretty much everything general. It's going to be what gives you the most attack power, healing power, spell power, survivability as a tank, etc. And that nothing's changed with that, okay? The thing that has changed, however, is going to be your Molten Core Heat 3 gear. Now, the reason that Molten Core Heat 3 gear is so important is that you have 3 different levels of difficulty, essentially. Heat 1, you need no fire resistance for, so you can pretty much go in there with whatever gear you have on. For Heat 2, you're going to have 96 total fire resistance. Now, Heat 2 is pretty easily attainable if you get 2 Librams of Resilience. Each of those is going to give you 20 fire resistance. And if you have Honored with the Hydraxian Waterlords, then you are going to have a 20 fire resistance cape to enchant. So that's a total of 60 right there. Mark of the Wild is 27. Paladin Aura is 50. However, they do not stack. You can have Magic Resistance Potions, and that's another 50 for 3 minutes. And you also have a Chromatic Flask of Resistance, which is 25. So pretty much all that together, they're pretty much just baseline. Let's say you're using a Flask of Chromatic Resistance, you're going to have 85. So you can get away with having your best in slot gear in Heat 3 as long as you have a Flask of Chromatic Resistance and you have Mark of the Wild, which I'm pretty sure everyone's going to have. Now, there's going to be one boss which is going to make this a little bit more difficult, which is going to be Gar. Now, the reason Gar is going to be so hard is because he actually dispels Mark of the Wild as well as Magic Resistance Potions, as well as he's going to knock out the Paladins out of range for the Fire Resistance Aura. So you actually have to innately have at least 96 just on that alone. Now, this is basically pretty easy. Now, if you did do the farm for Argent Dawn, you are going to have an extra 15 from your shoulders. So that is going to be a 75 base plus 25 from your Chromatic Flask, and that's a total of 100. So you are going to have baseline already enough. And for pretty much every other boss, you can either swap out your flask or put on different shoulders, which have better attack power, healing power, whatever it is. Now, getting into Heat 3, you are going to need a baseline of 226 fire resistance, or 201 if you're using a Flask of Chromatic Resistance. Now, there's a lot of different ways of getting this, and I'm not going to get into that right here, but your best bet is by getting the crafted gear. It's going to give you between 50 and 100 just baseline on your crafted gear, so do keep that in mind. And if you don't quite know what these are, you're going to be looking for Flare Core for your clothies. You're going to look at Flame Core. If you don't have enough money, you can probably get Volcanic Leggings. Those are really good. Those are just like 30 by themselves, as well as Volcanic Chest and Shoulders, I think it is. So just do keep that in mind. Now, obviously, you can go ahead and buy all of this off the rip if you have enough money, and you can just get into Heat 3 on the first week, which is pretty much what me and my guild did. However, as you do more Heat 2 and 3, your tier pieces are going to have fire resistance gear, your crafted gear is going to have fire resistance gear, and you can just slowly build on that. And that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out for now.